Thank you, Kim, and I would like to add my own welcome back to those of you who have joined us previously for our webinars, and a special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. Today what we're going to do is talk about, again, why mentoring programs can fail and some of those common pitfalls to avoid, whether you are presently in a mentoring program or whether you're beginning to start one. We hope we can help you with that. And then our next webinar coming up, we're really excited about. How does mentoring fit into your overall talent development strategy? This is going to be on October 30th. You'll be getting emails, and so look for those announcements. This is going to be a webinar that we are going to do jointly with one of our business partners, People Results, which are specialists in training and development and talent management and change management. They've been in business for over 8 years, and we're really looking forward to doing this webinar together. In addition to that, we'd like for you to visit our webcast and see if there's any previous webinars, or keep looking for those upcoming webinars. Please go to our website that is totally devoted to mentoring at mentoringtalent.com, and then / to look for those webinars. Now, what we'd also like to invite you to do is to join our LinkedIn group, the Mentoring Thought Leaders Club. This is for L&D and HR professionals that are responsible for the mentoring initiative within their organization. It's a Thought Leaders Club, and it enables everyone to learn from each other, share experiences and advice, and share their success stories when implementing a mentoring program. Currently, we've got over 300 members in our network for you to share your experiences with and to gain information from. So again, if you'd like to join our LinkedIn group, go to our mentoring website at mentoringtalent.com, and we invite you to join. Now what I'd like to do is to tell you just a little bit about Insala. We're a leading global provider of solutions around mentoring, career development, and career transition. And we work with organizations of all types and sizes. We invite you to learn more about Insala by going to our website, or again going to our website totally devoted to mentoring. At this time, Kim, can you take us through our first poll?
Sure. So everyone should notice a poll launch up on their screen, and what we're asking you is if you have a mentoring program in place right now. So maybe you've had one in place for less than a year, more than a year, perhaps it could use some improvement. Or maybe you don't have one in place yet. So just let us know. And it does look like we've almost got 80% response rate. So those of you who haven't answered yet, just take a moment to choose a choice. And I'll display the results up on the screen. All right, we'll go ahead and close that out. So Judy, the majority, 47%, don't have a mentoring program in place yet. And then another 23% have had one in place for less than a year, and a small handful, about 13%, said that theirs could use improvement. So maybe you could speak to those results.
Absolutely. Well, for those of you that have had it in place for less than a year, we hope that so far it's been successful, and if not, and there's some things that you'd like to maybe change or make a little better, we hope we can help you. And for that 47% that has not yet started a mentoring program, we definitely hope that we can be of value and that the information you receive here will be of value to you. So to tell you a little bit more about Insala, as I mentioned before, what we do is we're a solution provider. And we look at that in 3 main areas. And one is we provide consulting. We have a mentoring process and methodology that has been in place for over 21 years. And because it's been in place with organizations of all types and sizes, it's had a lot of practical application, so we know it works. So what we're able to do is to provide those consulting and advisory services so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls we're going to talk about today and make sure you've got all the best practice elements in place. In addition to that, we also offer training. And we offer training for mentors, mentees, managers and supervisors, and program administrators. That can be in workshops, it can be in webinars, but what we do is that we customize that to your organization's needs. And then we offer the software as a service technology. And this is what the organizations really need to make sure that their program is going to be sustainable, that you've got the ability to be able to do matching and pairing, have communication portals for the mentors and mentees to communicate back and forth in, and that you're going to be able to track and report results. This becomes very important because you don't want your mentoring program to become an administrative nightmare. And we have over 16 years of experience implementing talent management software solutions, so we can help you there. Now, to kind of review what you're going to learn today, we're going to first talk about some common trends that we're seeing in mentoring programs today, because there's really a lot of change that's going on around this concept of mentoring. In addition to that, we definitely are going to talk about why mentoring programs fail, and then some tips that we can give you on how to avoid that failure and do that. And then, as Kim mentioned, we're actually going to walk through a case study that was with one of our clients where we started with it and then how they decided to go forward on their own, what the results of that were, how we came back in and helped them again, and then what the end results and long-term results were to them. So again, we're looking forward to any questions that you're going to have that you will answer at the end. So to start with, we'd like to talk about some of the common trends that we're seeing around mentoring today. First of all, one of the big things we're seeing is that organizations are finding that mentoring is a business and organizational strategy. This isn't a warm, fuzzy, feel-good program. This is a business strategy. And how are they finding this out, and how are they presenting it? Well, first of all, they're moving from more informal mentoring to more formal mentoring, and they're tying it to business goals and what they're doing. So they're realizing mentoring really is an organizational and business strategy. So thinking about moving from more informal mentoring to formal mentoring, and actually moving from a less strategic approach to a more strategic approach around mentoring, what we'd like to do is to talk about some of those differences that we see between informal and formal mentoring. So one of the first one is that in informal mentoring, it's normally not tied to organizational objectives, but in formal mentoring, it is. In informal mentoring, normally there's no specific goals or success metrics that are involved. In formal mentoring, there are specific goals and success metrics that are actually identified. In informal mentoring, normally those matches are made on similarity and attraction and people, just kind of coming together because they like each other. In formal mentoring, the matches are made based on development and developmental goals. We believe the #1 criteria for the matching and pairing should be around development in doing this. Normally, again, in informal mentoring, there's no specific program manager. Formal mentoring, there's a program manager and administrator to help guide the program. In informal mentoring, there's no defined timelines for partnerships, but in formal mentoring, there really are some defined timelines on doing that. One of the things that we have heard from organizations, in fact, this actually came up a few days ago in a training that we were doing, and that is the fact that many times organizations have problems finding mentoring because a common misperception is that if I decide I'm going to be a mentor in a mentoring program, this is something that could be a lifetime commitment. It just could be ongoing for years and years, where I haven't got that kind of time to commit to doing this. But in a formal mentoring program, there is a defined timeline. And our clients that we work with really have those defined timelines anywhere from 10 months to 12 months to 18 months. So they have a much higher ability to find mentors and individuals that say, yeah, I can commit to this for, 10 months or 12 months or 18 months, knowing that there really is kind of like a formal end in mind. Probably most important is in informal mentoring, there's no training involved. In formal mentoring, there is. And we're going to talk about the fact about how that really has a big impact on the success of your mentoring program. So at this time, Kim, would you take us through the next poll?
Sure. If everybody could just take a moment to look up on their screen, you'll see the next poll launching. And what we're wanting to know is, what is your primary reason for having your mentoring program? Do you want to build a succession pipeline, develop skills within of your employees, or reinforce learning and training, maybe onboarding of new hires, or support specific career development initiatives. So if you just select the main reason that you all have implemented your mentoring programs, for those of you who have them. Looks like we have over 60% response rate. If you could just take a moment to choose one, that would be great. All right, since we're above 80, I'll just close this out and then display the results to everyone. So Judy, it looks like a full half of all of our attendees have this program to support a career development initiative. Secondary to that, at 22%, skills development, and then tertiary would be at 19%, building a succession pipeline. So that's pretty consistent with what we usually see. And so maybe you could speak to those results.
Yes, I would agree, Kim. Those are the types of things that we see. And in fact, what I'm going to do is kind of show you how some of our clients are using formal mentoring programs in their organization. Some of them for onboarding and making sure that individuals that come into the organization are getting the right start. And what they're finding is that there's a much higher level of commitment and engagement when working with these individuals. And not only that, but the learning curve is greatly decreased in what they're doing. People are getting up to speed a whole lot faster when they've got a mentor where they start out just right with the organization. Organizations that use mentoring to enhance their corporate diversity and inclusion program. And we're talking about more than just government numbers here. We're talking about organizations who are offering mentoring to those individuals who normally would never get involved in mentoring. One great example we have is that we've got a client that is actually offering this to individuals all the way down to the manufacturing floor. And I guarantee you these were individuals that normally were never included in a mentoring program. We have clients that are mentoring to reinforce their training programs. And one of the things that I know everybody's experienced is you go to a training program, you get lots of knowledge and information, but you don't always know exactly how to take that back and use it on the job. So having a mentor that can help you with that reinforces that learning. You're able to take what you've learned, put it into practice right away. It's much better learning. And what we find is organizations use this to support career development, leadership development, or building that succession pipeline. So again, you were seeing here, 50% of you said that you were using it to use it for career development, and then also that skills development, and then 19% for this succession pipeline. So that's pretty much in line of what we are seeing. Now, again, one of the things that we're seeing that is probably the most popular strategic use of mentoring is developing leaders, and that definitely leads into the succession pipeline and definitely leads into that skills development and career development that that you're using. And so one of the things that we found when we actually did a recent survey was that this was very true. Individual organizations are looking to really develop those leaders and strengthen that career development and succession pipeline in doing that. Now, the survey that we ran was titled Mentoring as an Effective Program, Effective Offering and Career Development Programs. Now, the survey really found out that what organizations are currently offering their employees around career development. It also looked at what they found was most effective, and then their main business goals for career development in doing that. We actually got responses from over 320 HR professionals, and some of the interesting things that we found out in going through this was that mentoring really was a good support in doing that. So we found that mentoring really was an effective offering in career development programs for all the employees as they move forward. Now, if you'd like to have a copy of this, one of the things that we would like for you to do is to email us at info@insolid.com, and we'd be glad to send you a free copy of this survey. Now, we talked about some trends that we're seeing in mentoring, and we'd also like to talk about some of the types of mentoring that we're seeing, because we're seeing mentoring being used in a lot of different ways within organizations. Now, we still see probably most often the one-to-one mentoring experience that goes through. This is the mentoring partnership where you see one mentor, one mentee in doing that. But what we're also seeing a lot of is distance mentoring, because more and more organizations are spread out over a country, they're spread out over the globe, and there are so many advantages to distance mentoring. We're finding out all the time about organizations being able to share information across great distances in being able to do that. And one of the comments that we get a lot is the fact that people are excited that they're getting to meet people and actually learn more about parts of the company that's outside of their normal responsibility levels. We get these comments all the time, and people say, you know, it's really great to meet somebody that I probably never would have come in contact with physically had it not been for the mentoring program. So distance mentoring is really becoming very, very popular. In addition to that, we're seeing situational mentoring, where individuals want to get involved in, say, possibly a research project or a specific project that has a very definite focus. And so situational mentoring is becoming very important. Mentoring circles, great way for individuals to share information. And what you're doing is you're bringing together individuals who have a common focus in what they want to accomplish in mentoring, and everybody in that circle plays the role of mentor with something to contribute, and the role of mentee with areas they can develop in, and information and knowledge they'd like to receive. We're also seeing a lot of situations around group mentoring, or what could be called team mentoring, and this is where you've got a mentor with several mentees, or you've got a mentee who has more than one mentor, and they're working together as a group or a team for development. Peer mentoring, which is normally within two people who are in the same or similar level within the organization, is also being used more and more. We've probably seen a lot more of that, and I would say the last year and a half, it seems becoming more and more popular. And this is where both individuals are playing the role of mentor and mentee. So based on what it is they can teach and bring to each other, they sometimes play the role of mentor, they sometimes play the role of mentee. And then reverse mentoring, we're hearing about this more often also. In fact, I was actually in a training program yesterday with some very, very high-level mentors that were involved, and one of the comments that we got from them, and again, these were individuals that had been with the organization long periods of time, very senior levels, and several of them brought up the fact that they all had a mentor, and it was a reverse mentoring situation. The mentors were much younger than they were, fairly new, sometimes out of the university, and they were able to work with these senior managers who then were in the mentee situation, and helping them with social networking and helping them with looking at different technologies and looking at areas around different generational issues and so on. So reverse mentoring really is becoming more and more popular in doing that. So we've gone through, we've talked about some trends that we've seen in mentoring, and that includes how it's used in organizations as well as different types of mentoring. And so now we want to concentrate on that area of why programs fail. We find there really are probably 7 common areas. Now, there's a lot of reasons why mentoring programs can fail, but we find they kind of fall in these 7 areas. And the first one is there's a lack of structure and guidance, meaning that individuals really don't know what the program is all about. They don't know exactly what they need to do. There's not a plan or a strategy in place that says here's, and starting out with the best practice elements and what they're supposed to do. And there's also a lack in clarity of purpose. So they're not really sure why the organization's doing this. And it's not getting communicated even if the organization has identified that. It's not getting down to the people. So they're really concerned, and there's a lack of clarity as why the organization is even doing this. Because there's a lack of clarity on purpose, many times you'll find there's a lack of interest or support from the management. The management of the organization is going to be concentrating on those things the organization deems most important. And if mentoring has not been positioned as a business and organizational strategy, it's probably not going to get the support that it needs, and it's not going to get the focus that it needs. So therefore, many times you find there's a lack of interest or support from management. People not understanding their roles. What's my role as a mentor? What's my role as a mentee? And what we also hear is what's my role as a manager in this and how we're doing this. And then following that also, and kind of tying closely into that, is no training on exactly how to implement those roles. What does it look like when I'm being a good mentor? What does it look like when these things are happening? There's a common misperception that everybody should understand how to be a mentor. And you certainly should understand how to be a mentee. And we're finding that's not true. One of the things that we talk about is the fact that we believe, and we're finding out that organizations believe this when we talk with them, that this process and the partnership should be mentee-driven. Now, one of the questions we get from the mentees is, you know, I'm agreeing. I understand when you say that I should be driving this mentoring partnership, but what is it that I'm supposed to do? What am I supposed to demonstrate that illustrates that I'm really driving this mentoring partnership? And so this needs to be clarified in training. People need to understand. And when I talk about training, I'm not talking about just rolling out a quick orientation program. It's really giving people the understanding of what their role is, what it is they need to do, give them some practice in it, and give them some reinforcement in going through that. Another thing that we see is inability to go to someone if the partnership isn't working. If you're a mentor or a mentee and the partnership isn't working, you don't have any place to go to talk to somebody to find out maybe some alternatives. Do you need to get mismatched? Or what we find out that happens even more often is there's some kind of a misperception. Somebody's got a misunderstanding in the partnership, whether it's the mentor, the mentee, or the manager in doing this. But I can tell you that mentoring programs are a little different than a lot of programs you'll roll out. And in mentoring programs, if the partnership isn't working the way that it should, individuals aren't going to blame their partnership or the fact that maybe they didn't go to somebody they should have. They'll blame the program. So make sure that you've got somebody that can make everything clear, that they can keep those partnerships on track. And then one of the things that becomes very important is we find mentoring programs fail if there's an inability to manage that program and ensure sustainability. And many times this means an online technology to help to do that. You don't want to let your mentoring program become an administrative nightmare. If you do, I guarantee it's going to fail. And that doesn't matter whether you have got 20 pairs or you have got 400 pairs. If you don't have some way to manage that program, then we know it's going to fail. So at this point in time, Kim, can you take us through our next poll?
Definitely. So I'm launching the polls on the screen now. And our question is, we'd like for you to select the most common pitfalls that you experienced when you launched your mentoring program. We know that only about half of you actually have one in place, but for those of you who do, if you could please let us know what your major obstacles are. And Judy would definitely speak to those and hopefully help the other attendees avoid them as well. Looks like we've got about 30% voted, and so hopefully we can get up above 40%. If you could just take a moment to check one or more. You could check more than one if you encountered more than one difficulty. Great. So I'll go ahead and close this and share the results on screen. So Judy, it looks like the majority of people, 37%, had an inability to manage the program to ensure its stability. And then also a large percentage, 34%, people not understanding what their roles were, and then no training, followed by lack of structure, lack of interest, and then a small percentage inability to go to someone if the partnership is not working. So maybe you could speak to those results.
Absolutely. And I'm not surprised at the results. These are the types of things that we hear with our clients in doing this. So now what we'd like to do, after we've talked about some of these pitfalls, is kind of walk through some ways of how to avoid some of these as you're going through. So, you know, the first thing that we want to do is kind of take you through a process that talks about different things that you should be doing. And we call that the PIM model, or plan, evaluate, and manage. Now, during the planning phase, one of the things that you need to make back to organizational goals and during them. You need to ensure you've identified any possible challenges that may come up. And we talk about you need to do this in the beginning. And you need to make sure that you thought about them ahead of time instead of waiting to get into the program and then finding that you've got an issue. One of the things that we found with many of our clients is the fact that sometimes they jump into the program and just kind of get it started. And it's a little bit of the difference in what I call ready, fire, aim, instead of ready, aim, fire. And not going through that strategic planning process and really make sure they've got clear objectives and metrics, and also making sure they've really looked at all the possible challenges to the mentor, the mentee, and the organization. And one of the reasons we find is that, sometimes you got to pull back and you've got to push back on your stakeholders. I know that from an HR and an L&D standpoint that many of you want to please your customers, and that in this way. And if they want to get going, you want to do that. But we really advise that you push back and you suggest they really need to go through a strategic planning process to be able to do that. Also, you need to nominate a program administrator that these participants can turn to. And so if you do these things, then you're going to be able to avoid those common pitfalls of lack of structure and guidance, lack of clarity and purpose, and the one that you also brought up, which was an inability to go to someone if the partnership isn't working, and being able to do that. Now, during implement part of our process, what we suggest you do is market and brand that mentoring program. Advertise it. Communicate that process. And communicate the details to the entire organization. Even if you're not going to roll it out to the entire organization right away, but you're going to do this in phases, let everybody know about it. Let them get excited about it. Let them know that the organization cares enough about them that they are going to implement a mentoring program. We find that this is something that organizations forget to do. They jump in, get started, and it's like the word around is, what is this? And why are we doing this? So again, make sure you marketing and brand your mentoring program and communicate your process details to everybody that are involved. And then training, and we've talked about this over and over. And again, what we find is a lot of organizations will provide training to the mentors and mentees, and then they forget about the managers and supervisors in doing that. We found that a lot of times the managers and supervisors need that training because their questions are, you're asking us to support the program, you're asking us to support these partnerships, but we're not real sure what, quote, support looks like. Are we supposed to be right in there in the mentor-mentee partnership? Are we supposed to totally leave it alone? What are we supposed to do? So make sure that you provide training to all those areas, as well as make sure you give training for your program administrators so they're able to answer all the questions that are going to be coming up. So if you do all of these things that are part of the implement phase, you definitely are going to be able to communicate that clarity of purpose. And if you're able to do that, you're also going to be able to give the managers what they need. And so that lack of interest or support will no longer be a problem. And then definitely you had talked about that the people not understanding their roles or not providing training was popular with most of you, that was a problem. You'll take care of that also in being able to do that. Now, during the evaluate phase, which you want to be able to track progress of the partnerships and continue to gather ongoing feedback. And this is allowing you then to always improve your program as you're going through, which will pretty much allow you to avoid a lot of the pitfalls as you're going forward. And then during the manage phase, you're going to be able to track interactions. You want to be able to make sure you understand the progress of each of the partnerships, how often they're meeting, how they're meeting their goals and objectives, and so on. And if you've got an online solution to that, again, that will keep this from becoming an administrative nightmare in what you're doing. So make sure you've got that online tool available to ensure the sustainability. You don't want your program to fail just because there's too much administration to go through. Years and years ago, people had to use spreadsheets or Word documents or whatever, and now that's not what you have to do. There are a lot of technology tools to help you. We have a technology tool that will help to ensure that sustainability and make sure that your administration does not become one of your pitfalls in doing that. So again, what we'd like to do is to take you through a poll. And Kim, will you lead us through that?
Definitely. We've got our last poll here. It's going to pop up on the screen. What we'd like to know is, for those of you who have implemented a program, which steps really turned out rather successful? The planning part, the implementing part, the evaluating part, the managing part, or none of the above. So if you could just choose one or more selections there, give us an idea of where you're at, so as Judy walks through the case study, she could highlight relevant points to our attendee situations. Looks like we've got almost half of everyone having voted, so she'll just take another moment to choose, and I'll close it out. Great. So I'll share these results on the screen so we can all see where everybody's at. It looks like 64% of the attendees had success in planning the initiative, but then 52% were successful in implementing it. Going on down, another 28% in evaluating it, and then 16% in managing it. And about 19% say none of the above. So we can see some good successes on the front end of that process, and then lowering successes as you move through it. So Judy, maybe you could speak to those results.
Yes, and I'm really glad to see that 64% said that there was a planning process in place. Because, you know, if you skip that planning process, then you've got problems all the way down. We all remember the 80-20 rule, 80% planning, 20% implementation. And again, one of the biggest problems that we find is organizations just jumping in and be ready to go. So what we'd like to do now is take you through a case study of an organization that we actually worked with. And this happened to be a technology company. And this technology company produced machine components that were used with other technology organizations. And one of the things that was happening is they were growing by leaps and bounds. In fact, one of the things that was happening was that they were bringing in 50 to 60 new hires every quarter. Now, what they were having to do was to onboard them and train them as they did this. And one of the things that was happening was the training staff was overloaded with all these new hires that were taking place. Now, the other thing that was happening is not only was this training staff overloaded with 50 to 60 new hires, but one of the things they were finding out from the exit interviews and satisfaction surveys that they ran was the existing employees were complaining they weren't getting any training at all. They're saying, wait a minute, we understand, you know, these new people are okay, but how about me? And so they needed to get some training and some attention themselves. So what we did is we actually talked with the organization, met with them several times, and we felt that mentoring was the answer, and this was going to help them in doing that. Well, after we talked with them, when we went through all this, one other problem came up, and that problem was the fact that the L&D and our OD staff were getting tremendous pressure from their senior management to implement. Again, it was this ready, fire, aim versus ready, aim, fire in doing this. The senior management said, you know, this can't be too complicated, rolling out a mentoring program. Let's just get it done. I know you guys know how to do it. Just, you know, go ahead, roll it out, and get it done. So that's what they had to do. And again, many times we find that as a OD and an L&D individual, you want to try and please your client, and especially when it's senior management. So that's what they did. Well, here were the results of just going ahead and based on the pressure they got in rolling out that program without the strategic planning that they could have done. First of all, participants didn't have a clear understanding why the organization was even doing this, you know, and what's it for? How's it going to help us as an organization? Mentees also complained that the mentors did not seem engaged, and part of what we found out later was they didn't understand, the mentors didn't understand what their role was or what they were supposed to do, so they either did nothing or they just kind of let the partnerships, you know, be very vague in being able to do that. So, you know, the mentees felt, you know, mentors really didn't seem engaged in what they were doing. And because neither the mentors or the mentees were clear on the steps they were to take, what their role was, what was to be accomplished, and so on. Some of the partnerships did not work out at all. In fact, they began to dissolve at about the 4-month mark. They barely got started, and all of a sudden, they fizzled out in doing that. Now, the other thing that happened, senior management had really pushed to do this before, but then they started asking for quantitative information and qualitative information, and guess what? It wasn't available in what they were doing. So they had really pushed for this to happen, but it wasn't going to, they couldn't get the data that they wanted. So what we did is we went back, we met with them again, and in the first phase, the very first thing we did is we walked them through that strategic planning workshop. The name of that workshop is MORE. It stands for Mentoring, Organizational Readiness, and Effectiveness. And we took them through that workshop and really got a good, solid plan together, a good, solid rollout plan. In addition to that, what we did was the mentors, the managers, and supervisors through training. So that, again, everybody understood what their role was, and they understood exactly how to implement that role. Then what we also did in phase, and when I say phase 2, this was pretty much integrated with and in alignment with phase 1, was we provided them with technology to match those mentors and mentees, which definitely cut down on their administration time. And then what we were able to do is to help them track and measure results in how often the mentors and mentees were going to be meeting, how they were able to obtain their goals and objectives, what the progress was to those. So all the things that senior management had wanted, we were going to make sure they were able to do with this online tool. Now, here were some of the long-term results that they had in doing this. First of all, that ability to report. The program was tied to business objectives, and they could report and track results based on those business objectives because they had their success measurements. In fact, one of them, especially for that onboarding group, was that there was a faster learning curve. They were able to decrease that learning curve from 18 weeks to 13 weeks. They got people up and running faster because they were involved in mentoring partnerships to do that. They were also able to improve the qualitative evaluations that they got. And there was higher satisfaction in matching and pairing, the overall partnership results, and an understanding from the mentor, the mentee, and the manager to what their roles were and exactly what they were supposed to be doing. In addition to that, they found that when they were moving forward, they had more mentors that were applying to be mentors again because it was an enjoyable partnership and an enjoyable experience. And also they found that mentees were applying to become mentors in doing this. In addition to that, they had the ability to track progress to the learning goals and objectives the mentors and mentees were working on. They were getting comments from managers and supervisors that they felt much more satisfaction with the program and therefore were able to support it in what they were doing. They were able to decrease their administration time in what they were doing by 50% by using the online technology solution that we provided to them. It provided better matches and cut down a lot on the administration time that they had. So looking at all of these things, how can we help you? Well, first of all, we can help you evaluate what a structured mentoring program can achieve for your organization using this readiness workshop that we talk about. We can help you determine if your organization can roll out mentoring and ensure it's going to be an effective talent development initiative. And we help you implement a successful mentoring program using our online mentoring solutions and training and help you achieve a maximum program return on investment and be able to demonstrate results in what you're doing. So as some final thoughts in reviewing what we have discussed today, that mentoring is a measurable business strategy. Remember, it's not a warm, fuzzy, feel-good program. It's a business strategy. And you're much better off if it is made formal versus informal and tied to business objectives. Also, we talked about mentoring being used widely to strengthen that succession pipeline, career development, and leadership development. We talked about many times what can happen in those pitfalls. There's a lack of clarity and purpose, lack of understanding of roles and responsibilities. There's no training so people understand exactly what they need to do. And, many times the sponsorship is not what it should be. So therefore, those are some common reasons why those programs fail. And then what we concluded with was how to help you avoid those pitfalls using the plan, implement, evaluate, and manage model in what we're doing. We'd like to remind you about a couple of things. And one is, please join our High Impact Mentoring Thought Leaders Club on LinkedIn. And again, visit our mentoringtalent.com website to do that. In addition to that, we are very excited about our next webinar with People Results. And the title of that being, how does mentoring fit into your overall talent development strategy? So please join us on October 30th for that. And we hope you'll watch your emails for notice. And then also, if you'd like a copy of our Mentoring as Effective offering in career development programs, the survey we conducted, please email us at info@insala.com. These are all the things that we would like to involve and invite you to join us on. So at this point in time, what we'd like to do is to take any questions that we have. Kim?
We've had a couple come in. One that really stuck out to me as being a good question is that one of our attendees wanted to know how to get the mentees to realize the opportunity that they have been offered and to really put in as much hard and diligent work on their own development as they do for their regular day job. So maybe you could address that.
That's really good. In fact, recently I was involved in a meeting, and it was like people were really trying to talk somebody into being a mentor or being a mentee and almost kind of dragging them through. And I know that the thought hit me. It was like, isn't this a privilege? If I as an individual are able to get experience and knowledge from someone and they can help me with my development, isn't that a privilege? Isn't that really great for me? I will tell you that there's no way anybody's going to take the extra time to be involved in a mentoring partnership unless they really can understand the benefits for them. So part of that answer to your question is you really need to go back to that advertising and marketing of the benefits to all individuals to participate in the program. But, you know, individuals, we find, spend less time in training programs and more time learning when they are in mentoring partnerships. Not only that, but I can get just-in-time learning. I may have a problem now and I need some help, but maybe I can't get to a training class for 4, 5, 6 months. So, you know, I can get answers and I can get the type of development, not just answers, but development that I need now. So it's kind of just in time. So I think what you really need to do, and especially this comes up during that strategic planning process, is really looking at what are going to be all the advantages of a mentoring partnership and having a mentoring program in place for the mentors, the mentees, and the organization as a whole, and really advertising and marketing those and going forward.
Great. Well, and we do have quite a few questions that have come in, so I just want to remind you all that if you don't get your question answered today, then you can always contact us at info, on our Insala website. But some of the good questions I think that would be relevant to the whole audience is maybe you could talk about some of the quantitative measurements that a company could use to demonstrate that their program is being successful.
This is a question that comes up. Measurement is a question that comes up every single webinar that we have done. And it's a good question because we say that you should measure results in what you're doing. And it's not commonly accepted that you measure mentoring, but we believe you should. I will tell you the two most common ways in which we see that mentoring is actually measured by an organization come in the fact that organizations can save time and dollars. So individuals, we have found that normally would have had to go to a training program instead of getting, to get the development they need. We're able to get that through mentoring partnerships and through mentoring development in doing that. And so the cost savings to the training programs, and we have one organization that's taken this all the way down to time off the job and travel and everything else. But the cost savings of obtaining the development that individuals need through mentoring partnerships versus actually getting it through a training program or the cost of involved in that, that's one way. That's one of the most common ways. The second most common way, and probably I should have mentioned this first because it's really the number one, is decreasing that learning curve, getting people up to speed faster, whether it is your onboarding program or whether it is individuals that have been in the job for some time, but you're beginning to teach them new skills. So one of the things that happens is being able to decrease that learning curve, getting people up to speed faster, getting people to understand that, how they're going to take the learning that they get and put it to real-world situations faster is really important. We had one individual that we talked to, and they were kind of talking about this was their experience with mentoring. And they talked about what they went into, and it had to do around presentations to senior management and things they wanted to do from a project standpoint. And so one of the things that they said was it was great learning, and they learned from their mentor how to do that and how to make them concise and specific and focused and all of these types of things. But he said there was also something that he learned that he wasn't expecting to learn. And what he learned from his mentor was all of the cultural nuances that needed to be considered that he wasn't going to get by going to a training class on giving presentations. All those cultural nuances of the senior management area he was going to be focusing on, that was an experience he wouldn't have gotten in a training class. So again, being able to decrease that learning curve and add in extra learning is real important.
Great, Judy. Thank you for addressing that. I had one more question that I definitely wanted to see if you could get to. One of our attendees has a question about what if the management is asking for a different kind of program than the HR and OD people have defined as being an appropriate solution to the organization situation. So management is wanting a different kind of program than what the initial research thinks would be appropriate. What would you do in that case?
Wow, I'm going to assume on this one that we're talking about a different kind of mentoring program. And I think that what you need to do in that situation is you still need to have a good, solid strategic plan. Part of what we talk about that needs to be in place is a good strategic planning process. Now, if you're talking about the difference between formal and informal mentoring program, that's one thing. I mean, coming up with all of the reasons why they need to move to a formal program versus an informal program is around measurements. It's around being able to report results. It's around, avoiding all those pitfalls that we talked about. If you're talking about a different kind of mentoring program, such as doing mentoring circles instead of one-to-one mentoring, or doing one-to-one mentoring instead of mentoring circles, again, I think you've got to go back to what are your business objectives, how would you measure results, and is the type of program you're talking about going to give you the results that you need? If you don't think about your business objectives and how you're going to address results, you'll never know if you've got the right kind of programs in place or not. And then in addition to that, if you go through and think about all those possible challenges, and you think about them up front for the mentor, the mentee, and the organization, that may also tell you that it's a good direction or a bad direction to go in. Not being real clear what you mean about different kinds of programs, I hope that was an answer that helps you.
I'm sure it was, because I do think that they were talking about different kinds of mentoring configurations. So another person asks, in the case study that you mentioned, could you talk about how much time was expected from the mentors, and specifically, and more specifically, what was really expected of them during the time that they were participating in the program?
I can't tell you what the time was that was expected before we got involved. In other words, as I mentioned, in this particular program, we talked with them, tried to get some things going. They got pressure from senior management just to implement. It didn't work, and then we came back and put some things in place. So I can't tell you how much time was involved before then, but we did know that a lot of the partnerships fizzled out, and I think actually was only about maybe half a dozen that were in place by the time the program closed down. But I can tell you that when we did go back in, part of what we talk about in training is that if individuals can't meet at least a couple of hours a month in what they're doing, it probably isn't going to be real beneficial in being able to do this. They need to be able to meet at least 2 hours a month. Now, when I say meet 2 hours a month, that doesn't mean that has to be exactly 2 hours. It could be a half-hour phone conversation in distance mentoring partnerships, and then maybe every week or every other week. What we're saying is that you need to make sure you stay in contact with each other. We had one training program that we were doing with an organization, and these mentors thought that if they met a couple hours a quarter with their mentees, that it would be okay. And we said, nope, that's just not enough, especially in the beginning stages of the mentoring partnership. You want to make sure that there's a lot more connection there. So we believe that mentors and mentees should meet together, a minimum of 2 hours a month. And how they break that up is going to be up to them. It's based on what they need to learn and so on. We do suggest that you provide role profiles for both the mentors and the mentees. And that's something that we have in place. And it's like literally a job description. It talks about the tasks, the responsibilities, and the skills required to do that job. You wouldn't ask anybody to take on a job that they weren't qualified for, didn't understand what it was all about. So one of the things you want to do is to provide those mentors and mentees with those role profiles so that they understand what's expected.
Great, Judy. Well, I think that answers a lot of the questions. There are still a few more. I'll maybe just ask one more that we have here that I think is a good one, and then we'll wrap up. Someone would like to know, when designing a mentoring process, in your opinion, what's the difference between developing a succession pipeline with mentoring and then a career development program through mentoring? The difference between succession and career development from a mentoring perspective.
I would say that probably the main difference is that we find in an organization that succession planning is normally at higher levels in the organization, and career development is all levels of the organization. Succession planning also is focused on very specific roles that you're trying to get people ready for. So the objectives of your mentoring initiative and the mentor goals and objectives that the mentor and mentee are working on are probably much more specific and defined, where in a career development program, what you're doing is you're looking at things that somebody would like to accomplish, possibly, advancement in their present position. And when I say advancement, I don't mean promotion. I'm talking about advancing their skill levels in their present position, or it could be advancing their skill levels so they can go to other positions in the organization. Mentoring is great for both of those, and one of the main reasons, especially in succession planning, is because the individuals that are involved there are getting a lot of information on how the organization runs and all those nuances that we talked about, previously. But succession planning, like I said, is normally at higher levels. You want people to understand not just skills, but cultural and organizational issues that are involved. And again, career development mentoring programs, probably open to much larger population in what they're doing.
Great. Well, Judy, thank you for taking the time to answer all of those questions. And it does look like we've reached the top of the hour now, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But I do want you all to know that if you have additional questions or you'd like to explore any of our solutions, you can definitely contact us. And Judy, did you have anything else before we wrap up the call?
No, I would just like to thank everybody for joining us and participating. And again, please go to our website that is totally devoted to mentoring at mentoringtalent.com, and watch your emails and check the website for our offerings that are coming up on October 30th, as well as our LinkedIn group. So thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you all.